Once what? Take it to eating guy in bed. Brothers outside requested to come inside. Jazakumullah. I feel like I'm sinking into this chair. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's fine. No, I feel it's fine. I can't sit with that on my feet in front of you, Dola. Right. Bismillah, I've got my teacher sat in front of me as well. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruhu wa nu'minu bihi wa natawakkalu alayh. ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه وذرياته ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد فقد قال الله تبارك وتعالى في القرآن المجيد والفرقان الحميد بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إنما الخمر والميسر والأنصاب والأزلام رجس من عمل الشيطان فاجتنبوه لعلكم تفلحون. وقال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يشربن ناس من أمتي الخمر يسمونها بغير اسمها أو كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. Honorable ulama kiram, elders, beloved youngsters, old friends and mothers and sisters listening at home. There is no doubt whatsoever that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given this life to each and every human and has made this life a life of struggles and challenges. As we continue along this journey of life, you will be faced with different challenges, different struggles. And this is the essence of life. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran He says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي كَبَدٍ, that we have created this insan and given him and granted him a life of struggles and challenges. Along this journey, a person will have to make many choices. Choices that will take him towards good, and some choices that will lead him towards evil. Depending on what choice he makes, that is the rank he is given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is why it is mentioned that in Allah ta'ala خَلَقَ الْمَلَائِكَ وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الْعَقْلَ وَخَلَقَ الْبَهَائِمَ وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الشَّهْوَةَ وَخَلَقَ الْإِنسَانَ وَرَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الْعَقْلَ وَالشَّهْوَةَ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created the angels and endowed the angels only with intellect, nothing but intellect. On the other side, He created the animals and entrenched within the animals nothing but lust and desire and shahwa. And then He created humankind. The humankind and the human race is a combination of both. رَكَّبَ فِيهِمُ الْعَقْلَ وَالشَّهْوَةَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala endowed humans with intellect and also entrenched within them lust and desire as well, shahwa as well. And then it is mentioned, فَمَنْ غَلَبَ أَقْلُهُ عَلَى شَهْوَتِهِ. In relation to the humankind it is mentioned, فَمَنْ غَلَبَ أَقْلُهُ عَلَى شَهْوَتِهِ فَهُوَ أَعْلَى مِنَ الْمَلَائِكَةِ. That human whose intellect and his angelic qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed and entrenched and endowed every human with, when they surface and they surpass and they exceed the very lustful qualities that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within us, because his angelic qualities have exceeded, then he shall become more noble in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than even the angels. This insan will be more noble than the angels in the eyes of Allah. This is the rank and this is the status that he or she will be given. However, on the other hand, if there is a person whose lust and desires that surfaces and it suppresses his angelic qualities, and the lust and desire supersedes his qualities of lust and desires, of his angelic qualities, then such a human, Allah says, that he shall become worse than the animals. In fact, he will be an insult to the animals. What does Allah say in the Quran? Ulaika kal an'am. That these humans are like animals. Balhum adal. They are worse than the animals. So the choices that we make is up to you and I. This is an option that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to you and I. However, there is no doubt whatsoever, and this is why Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, in the very hadith that I quoted, and mashallah this hadith was also being mentioned, those of you that were here on that Saturday night, I returned after Taraweeh and I was also listening mashallah to Moulana Ashraf talking, and then Moulana Talha mashallah came on for the question and answers, and the very same hadith that I quoted was a hadith that Moulana Ashraf also used, that a time will come upon my ummah. And the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam prophesies that there will be a group of people that will engage in vice, that will engage in sin. They will do the things that are wrong. And momentarily they will move away from the good. And namingly this particular vice that is mentioned in this hadith is probably more lethal to an individual and more lethal to a community as a whole, above all other vices and above all other sins. Many of you will be thinking that there are so many vices that are lethal. But this particular vice that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam singles out, that a time will come upon my ummah when a group of people from amongst them, لا يشربن ناس من أمتي الخمر, that will intoxicate themselves. Whether it may be intoxicating themselves through alcohol, or whether they then play with the linguistics and the semantics of intoxication. يُسَمُّونَهَا بِغَيْرِ إِسْمِهَا. They will change the name. It might not be alcohol, it might not be wine, it might not be the different spirits, but the names will be changed. And they will use other substances to intoxicate themselves. Whether you are popping a pill, whether you are, sniffing some kind of gas that you're not supposed to. And we all know the articles that are being passed through in the news at the moment about certain things being made illegal. Certain celebrities are being exposed whilst, enjoying themselves on holiday. They are sat around tables with canisters of gas in front of them. They're being exposed in the media. So whether we play with the semantics and the linguistics of the substances that intoxicate us or not, these are the things that have been mentioned by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And these substances of intoxication, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala addressing you and I, what does He say to us? إِنَّمَا الْخَمْرُ وَالْمَيْسِرُ وَالْأَنصَابُ وَالْأَزْلَامُ رِجْسٌ مِّنْ عَمَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ. That these substances that you will indulge in, whether it may be alcohol, whether it may be gambling, whether it may be your devotion to the idols, whether you are like engaging in raffles. In those days, the pagan Arabs were habitual of a raffle whereby they used to pull out arrows from a quiver and they used to act accordingly. So azlam. So all of these acts that you engage in, what does Allah say? Rijsun. This is the filth and the dirty tricks of shaitan. And what does Allah say? Fajtanibu. Refrain, stay away, do not indulge, do not engage. Even if it means you having to to experience different kind of symptoms after engaging in it. And then you realize I'm doing wrong. Whether it may be cold turkey, as they say, whether it may be blowbacks, stay away. Stay away, refrain. لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ, if you want to become prosperous. And why does shaitan want to take us towards these filthy tricks and these filthy habits? إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ الشَّيْطَانِ أَن يُوقِعَ بَيْنَكُمُ الْعَدَاوَةِ. Shaitan wants to stir up hatred and trouble amongst you. وَيَصُدَّكُمْ عَنْ ذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَعَنِ الصَّلَاةِ, so that he may then take you away from engaging in salah, from engaging in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these will be the effects of engaging in such filthy habits. You will not come towards the masjid. You will not engage in the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is why Allah says, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُنْتَهُونَ, will you refrain? Will you stay away? When this verse was revealed, in the hadith kitab of Nasa'i Babu Tahrim al-Khamr, it is mentioned that upon the revelation of these verses, Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu said, Intahayna. Wallah, we will refrain. Wallah, we will stay away. We will not indulge. We will not engage. And in the tafsir of these verses, it is mentioned in Bayanul Quran. فيه أن المعاصي تتضمن المضر الدنيوية كتضمنها المضر الأخروية. If you will engage and indulge, then let it be known to you that you will be harming yourselves in all aspects, whether it may be from the aspect of the dunya, from a worldly aspect, or whether you are harming yourselves from the aspects of the hereafter. You will be at a loss in its entirety, whether you accept it or not. And it's difficult, don't get me wrong. To stay away from sin is not easy, but it's definitely possible. It's definitely possible. If you make this intention within yourself and you want to stop, you can. This is why one Moulana very beautifully said that, you know what, there are people out there who want to change. They want to stay away from vice. They want to stay away from the wrong things. But what does he say? He says, shaitan has no problems with your noble intentions so long as they are for tomorrow. So long as they are for tomorrow and not for today. If you want to change, it has to start today, not tomorrow. Shaitan's got no problems with your noble intentions that are for tomorrow. And there are people who try really hard. I was in Masjid al-Salam yesterday, and it so happened that yesterday morning I had a friend who called me. And when I say friend, I taught him to drive. And since then we've become close. He spent a number of years in prison. And I've got a friend sat right in front of me over here who's been inviting me for the past 14, 15 years to deliver an address and a lecture in the prison. And I remember just as I graduated and I was about to leave for my 1 year in Jamaat, I actually, on his request, covered for him, and mashallah, you gave me the opportunity to work there for a few months. So, I went to pick this guy up for his first lesson. And when he saw me, he looked at me and he said, do I know you from somewhere? And I looked at him and I said to him, do I know you from somewhere? So I said to him, I says, have you spent some time in Kirkham? And he looked at me and he goes, yeah, I have. So I said, that's where you've seen me. So anyway, I gave him driving lessons. Now this guy, without going into too much detail, he had a past. He had a real past. Drugs, gangs, guns, you mention it. Everything. Yeah? And the emotional state of a person that engages in these habits. So many times the driving lesson would finish and he was an emotional wreck. Not because I've been shouting at him, by the way. Yeah? But, he'd be talking to me, and very much the driving lesson would turn into a counseling lesson. Where he was saying, explain, Moulana, this happened and that happened, and I'm experiencing this and I'm experiencing that. And you're now trying to pick this guy up. So, yesterday he phoned me. He says, Moulana, I need to see you for 5 minutes. So I said to him, okay. I was about to leave because my children had some appointments, etc. So I said, yeah, I've got no problem. I'll give you 5 minutes. So he parked up near my house, in fact, outside Moulana Mubarak's house. And I sat in the car with him. And you know, one thing that we need to understand, that a person succumbs to a vice, succumbs to a wrong, namely drug abuse, addictions of alcohol, etc. He goes through the correct means. Why? Because within his own self, he wants to reform, he wants to change. He goes to the doctors, he started taking medication, he's attending counseling sessions. If it's of an extreme level, then maybe he's gone into a rehab and he's now, basically trying to reform himself. He comes out clean. He comes out clean. We as a society, what kind of opportunities are we actually offering to these individuals whereby we are not kind of throwing them into the deep end and basically making them prone and kind of opening up to relapsing again? We have nothing available, unfortunately. And to take it a step further, and this is my address about this particular individual. He said to me, and he's so genuine within himself. I kept in touch with him. He learned to drive with me well before COVID. And every now and again, we talk on text. A lot of the time it's probably banter about football or something like that. But we talk. And he said to me, he says, Moulana, I've been trying to work hard to try and make sure I earn a halal living. But he says, but society is such that when people get to know what my past is, when they offer me a job, talk about exploitation, what are we offering these people? He says, I get offered £6-7 an hour. How are you supposed to live on £6-7 an hour? What's minimum wage? Half of that. Literally, almost half of that. He says, Moulana, I can't even get through a month. He says, I'm trying my best to earn halal, to live a righteous life. But he says, come the end of the month, before even a week or two is left for the month to finish, I have nothing. He says, Moulana, how am I supposed to live? He says, I literally just went to sell my car. And even they're trying to cut me short. A car that's worth almost £7,500, they're offering me just over £5,000 for it. Exploiting people because of their past. Is this how low we have become? Is this how much we have fallen as a society and as a community? So he said, Moulana, what shall I do? He says, if I want, I can go back to my past life. I can earn £2,000-3,000 a day if I want. A day. And he's barely earning £1,500 to £2,000 a month. And we're exploiting people like that. So, there are people out there who genuinely want to change. What facilities do we have? If they're not going to relapse, then what are they going to do? If they won't go back to their old life, what's going to happen to them? Talk about nuksan and harm from a worldly aspect. We see it right in front of our eyes. People that are trying to be noble, even then they're being harmed. As for those that are involved, how many times do we get phone calls from parents, from wives, from ladies that are saying to us, Moulana, what shall I do? I'm trying to hold out for as long as I can, but I can't anymore. Many a times we see people from good families and they're on the streets. And we as a community, again, look at our own mentality. We think to ourselves that these people have been abandoned by their families. Do you seriously know what those families have been through? Do you know that they exhausted all avenues in order to help that individual? Whether it may be paying his debts, whether it may be taking him for counseling, to taking him to the doctors, taking him for rehab, paying for whatever he needed in order to allow him to reform himself. But then it came to a point when abnormality becomes the norm of that house. People in that household, the younger children of that household are now being affected. What do they have to do? What can they do? They have no choice but to close the doors. And we have no choice but to advise to close the doors. Close the door, but don't bolt the door. Say to him, the day you reform, the day you become sober, then these doors are open for you again. So the marriage is on the rocks. The parents are absolutely all over the place. One parent is taking the path of empathy, trying to help the child. The other parent is adopting an iron fist. تتضمن المضار الدنيوية كتضمنها المضار الأخروية. And then from a dini perspective, from a religious perspective, what harm does such a person have to endure? I'll give you one example. Malik bin Dinar rahmatullahi alayh went for Hajj. And whilst he was there in Hajj, he said, on one occasion I was stood near the Kaaba, just admiring the masses of people, the mass exodus of people that was converging towards the Kaaba. And whilst I was watching this beautiful sight, he says, the thought occurred in my heart that, what? Manil maqbulu minhum wa manil mardud. Hundreds of thousands of people have come over here for Hajj. But who is it from amongst them whose Hajj has actually been accepted? And who is it whose Hajj has actually been rejected? Whose Hajj has been accepted and whose Hajj has been rejected? He says, this thought occurred in my heart. And he said, I wrestled for the rest of the day with this thought inside of my heart, inside of my mind. And to some point, it actually caused me a lot of pain and anxiety as well. Why? Because I was thinking to myself, which group do I belong to? Is my Hajj accepted or is my Hajj rejected? He said, wrestling with this thought for the rest of the day, he says, in the evening I retired to my bed. And when I went to sleep, he says, I saw a dream. And in this dream, I was told that, O Malik, غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لِلْجَمِيعِ إِلَّا رَجُلًا وَاحِدًا. That Allah has forgiven everybody. And Allah has accepted the Hajj of each and every individual, but for one person. But for one person. Only one person whose Hajj has not been accepted and it's been rejected. So he says, I woke up the next morning. And after waking up, he says, I was even more aggrieved. That what if that one person is me? What if it is only me whose Hajj has been rejected and Allah has not accepted my Hajj? And again, I spent the rest of the day in anxiety, in panic, wrestling with these thoughts now in my mind, in my heart. And then that following evening, I also retired to my bed. Only for me to go to sleep and see another dream. Only this time I was told that, O Malik, it's not you. O Malik, it's not you whose Hajj has not been accepted. But rather it is a person by the name of Muhammad ibn Harun from Balkh. He's the person whose Hajj hasn't been accepted. So he thought to himself, what an unfortunate individual. And when I woke up in the morning the next day, he says, I felt for him that hundreds of thousands of people have come, their Hajj has been accepted, but for this one individual. He says, and this grew a kind of genuine desire for me to actually meet with him and to find out the reason why his Hajj has not been accepted. I was inquisitive. I was asking myself, I need to find out what the reason is. So I started making inquiries. I started asking people about this person. And then eventually I was able to make some inroads and I managed to locate this person. Only for me to speak to people, and what the surprising thing was, whoever I spoke to, they gave rave reviews about him. They said he's a really, really good person. He's extremely pious, a guy of much piety and nobility, really humble, really modest. And he goes, when you see him, you'll see the piety actually, emanating from his face. So he said, this made me even more confused, and this baffled me even more. And then only for my desire to meet him to grow stronger as well. And eventually, I managed to find him. And he says, as soon as I entered into the room where he was engaged in his worship. He was engaged in his worship. And there he was. And he noticed my coming into the room and my sitting behind him. And without even turning around, he said to me, O Malik, how are you and why have you come here? Why is it that you've come here? So when I saw him, and I saw his demeanor, his humbleness, his modesty, he says, I couldn't pluck up the courage from within me to actually tell him why I've come. But he saw this, my reluctance and my hesitancy. He turned around and said to me, he said, no Malik, please, tell me why have you come? So he says, you know what, I saw this dream. And in this dream I was informed that Allah has accepted the Hajj of each and every individual but yours. And he says, I can't understand. Why? You seem like such a noble and a pious person. So what did he turn around and say? He says, you know what? You're not the first person to say this to me. He says, I have been given this message for the past 30 years. How long? 30 years. Every year a person comes to me. I come for Hajj every year. And I've been coming for the past 30 years. And every year a person comes to me and he says, you know what? I saw a dream where everybody's Hajj has been accepted but yours. So then he asked him, but why? So he explained. He says, Sharibtu khamran inda khidnin li. He says, on one occasion, I was out partying with my friends. It was a Friday night, it was a Saturday night. You know, we know exactly what happens on a Friday, Saturday night. He said, I went out with my friends. And like we say, you know, the youngsters say, we had a blast. We leathered ourselves. That's the terminology you guys use, huh? Leathered ourselves, completely leathered. He says, this is what I did. Yeah? I was completely on a high, intoxicated, totally. And in this very state, he says, I returned home. And when I came home, he says, Atamayalu fi mashi. I couldn't even walk. I was stumbling to the right, I was falling to the left. And in this very state, I entered into my home, only for me to be greeted by my mother. So my mother came out, and she saw me in this state. She started helping me to walk. And not only did she help me, but she also addressed me and she said to me, he says, Muhammad, آخر يوم من شعبان أول يوم من رمضان يصبح الناس صواما وتصبح سكران. He says, it is the last day of Shaban. It is the eve of Ramadan, the first night of Ramadan. Tomorrow morning, even the sinners will be fasting. Even they will become religious. The disobedient will become obedient. And they will wake up in the morning in the state of fasting. And you will be waking up in the morning of being intoxicated. How can this be? He says, when my mother addressed me in this manner, he says, I went into a fit of rage. And in my naivety, in my stupidity, I slapped my mother. What did I do? I slapped my mother. And she fell into a fire. I remember Moulana saying, Moulana Ashraf, that somebody phoned him. And what did he say? He says the mother phoned saying that he hit me, so I had to kick him out of the house. This is happening now. This is happening now. Am I right, Moulana? Where's he gone? Is he hiding away? Oh, he's there. Yeah. Is that correct, Mausab? I heard Mausab saying this. This is happening now. What did he say? He says, I slapped my mother. Because of this, for the past 30 years, I have been coming for Hajj. He says, every year a person comes and tells me, your Hajj has been rejected. You will have to suffer on both sides, whether you like it or not. Whether it may be the harms and the loss from a worldly aspect, or whether it may be harm and a loss from a religious aspect and from the aspect of the hereafter. You have to change whether you like it or not. And this change has to start today. And once you've taken the correct steps in order to ensure that you do not relapse, what do you need to do? What does the Quran teach us? That if you really want to change, what do you need to do? And then whether you like it or not, you will have to do this. You cannot go back to that old network of friends. You cannot go back to those old places. You will have to change your environment. You will have to change your group of friends, whether you like it or not. This is why in Surah Bara'ah, at the end of the entire surah, which addresses the whole expedition of Tabuk, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the 5 different groups of people that answered and that accepted the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He starts off with those people that obliged diligently right from the very first point of call. Okay, الَّذِينَ اتَّبَعُوهُ فِي سَاعَةِ الْعُسْرَةِ, that even at the times of difficulty they answered to the call of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and they said, we are with you in this expedition. Then there were those who had a slight reluctance. They were a little bit hesitant, but eventually they obliged and they accepted as well. The third group of people were those who wanted to join but they couldn't. وَلَا عَلَى الَّذِينَ إِذَا مَا أَتَوْكَ لِتَحْمِلَهُمْ قُلْتَ لَا أَجِدُ مَا أَحْمِلُكُمْ عَلَيْهِ. He says, oh Rasulullah, we want to join, but we don't have the financial muscle. We don't have the financial means to be able to join you. And the fourth group of people were the munafiqeen. وَقَعَدَ الَّذِينَ كَذَبُوا اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. They were the ones that lied to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Allah mentions this in the Quran, that they were liars. They lied to me, they lied to my beloved Nabi. And then the fifth group of people were genuine Sahaba, who didn't join. But later on they came and they accepted the fault that they made, the wrong that they did. وَآخَرُونَ اعْتَرَفُوا بِذُنُوبِهِمْ. They submitted, oh Rasulullah, we made a mistake. There were 10 in total. 7 of them, their forgiveness was granted straight away. 3 of them, their forgiveness was delayed. وَعَلَى الثَّلَاثَةِ الَّذِينَ خُلِّفُوا. They were the very 3 Sahabas, and we hear it in Fazail Amal, the story time and time again. So, amongst the 3 was whom? One Sahabi by the name of Hazrat Ka'b radiallahu ta'ala an. What did he say? What did he say when he was later questioned, without going into too much detail, when he was later questioned that, you know what, how did you manage to come out of that whole ordeal? You know, that must have been the most difficult period of your life, and he attested to that yes, it was. But he said the only thing that safeguarded us was what? وَإِنَّمَا أَنْجَانِ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى بِالصِّدْقِ. It was the fact that we spoke the truth and we didn't lie. That is what helped us. And then addressing this, staying with the people that are truthful, staying with people that are good. Allah starts the last chapter, the last ruku of this whole chapter. What does he start it with? Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Fear Allah. Fear Allah and stay with those who are truthful. If you want to change, you will have to change your network of friends whether you like it or not. After the demise of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, a certain impostor by the name of Musaylama, he laid a claim to the throne of prophecy. And he claimed to be a prophet after the death of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Obviously, it was a time of turmoil. The Sahabas just lost Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and on the other side you had this guy claiming to be a prophet. So as Abu Bakr radiallahu ta'ala anhu, this was one of the first pressing issues that he had to deal with. Anyway, this one certain individual, he defected from the army of Musaylama. And he wasn't any old individual, he was actually in fact his son-in-law. It was his son-in-law. And he came to Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala an, and then he confessed. He said, I made a mistake. Ta'ibun qabla an yuqdara alayya. He says, oh Amirul Mu'minin, I've made a mistake. I want to repent. I want to seek forgiveness before I die. So what did Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu advise him? Idhab fa'anzil ala khayri ahli al-Madina. He says, you know what, if you really want to change, if you really want to reform, if you want to bring about a revolution within your life, then you know what, change your network of people that you normally kind of socialize with. Go and stay with the best people of Medina. What did he do? He said, فَنَزَلْتُ عَلَى تَمِيمْ دَارِ. He says, I went and stayed with Hazrat Tamim Dari radiyallahu ta'ala anhu. And he says, on one certain occasion, فَبَيْنَمَا أَنَا عِنْدَ تَمِيمْ وَنَحْنُ نَتَحَدَّث. He says, I was sitting with Hazrat Tamim radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, and we were discussing, we were having a discussion. إِذْ خَرَجَتْ نَارٍ. There was a volcanic eruption. There was a volcanic eruption, a volcano erupted. And Hazrat Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu came, and he said, Tamim, go and deal with this, please. Tamim, go and deal with it. So he says, Ya Amirul Mu'minin, nar. This is lava, fire. What do you want me to do? He says, I don't care, but go and deal with it. Hazrat Umar was Hazrat Umar. So he stood up. And this person, he says, I saw Hazrat Tamim. He went towards the lava. فَقَامَ يَحُوشُهَا بِيَدِهِ. He says he motioned the lava back. He motioned for it to return. And he pushed it back. He pushed it back until it completely receded into the earth. اذهب فأنزل على خير أهل المدينة. Go and stay with good people. If you really want to change, go and stay with good people. That's the only way you will be able to bring about this reform. And this is what the Quran teaches us. Ittaqullah wa kunu ma'as sadiqeen. Otherwise, you are lying in your claim of wanting to reform. There's no two ways about it. You're just kidding yourself. You're tricking yourself and the others around you. So change. And it has to start today. Let it not be that we delay to such an extent that then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then decides to close the doors on us. What did the disbelievers of Makkah say? وَقَالُوا فِي قُلُوبِنَا أَكِنَّا مِمَّا تَدْعُونَا إِلَيْهِ وَفِي آذَانِنَا وَقْرٌ وَمِن بَيْنِنَا وَبَيْنِكَ حِجَابٌ فَاعْمَلْ إِنَّنَا عَامِلُونَ. What did they say? When Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam invited them, they says, you know what? There seems to be a heaviness. It seems as though that our ears are blocked. We can't hear what you're saying. We're not understanding what you're saying. وَمِن بَيْنِنَا وَبَيْنِكَ حِجَابٌ. There seems to be some kind of a superficial veil between you and I, between us and you. We're not understanding what you're saying, O Rasulullah. So they said, you know what, you carry on doing what you're doing, let us do what we want to do. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to them time after time after time, explained, tried to bring them back. Now listen, believe in that one Allah, safeguard yourself from the torments of the hereafter. But then eventually, they went beyond the limits. Doors were now closed. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, when we go past those limits, إِنَّا جَعَلْنَا عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِهِمْ أَكِنَّةً. And now those hearts are sealed. Now your hearts are sealed. The truth will not penetrate into that heart. You will not even understand the good when it is being explained to you. And Allah uses words like khatama, and Allah uses words like taba'a. Let's make this change now. Let it not be that the doors are closed upon us, and then we can't even return when we want to return. Let's not think to ourselves that, you know what, I've got a long way to go yet. Out of our own pride, we think we can carry on doing what we want to do. No. Once Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sat with a Sahabi, and he was eating with his left hand. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam addressed him, he engaged him, he said to him that, oh my Sahabi, Sammillah wa kul bi yaminik. You know, recite Bismillah and eat with your right hand. This Sahabi turned around and said, he says, Mastata'tu. He says, I can't do it. You know, when we tell a child, let beta do this. Oh, I can't do it. I don't know how to do it. You can do it. You just don't want to do it. Same thing with this Sahabi. Mastata'tu. I can't do it. So what happened? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when he saw that he's doing this, he's refusing to do this, he said, Lastata'ta. Ma mana'ahu illa al-kibr. He said the only reason he wasn't doing was out of pride. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know what? You will never be able to do so. Divine intervention. Now a seal came. فَمَا رَفَعَهُ إِلَى فِيهِ. He was then unable to lift his hand to his mouth till the day he died. Divine intervention. Let it not be that we surpass that limit and that time that Allah has given you and I. And we've been given this opportunity to change. All the stats are there, mashallah. You know, the youngsters, they explain everything in a PowerPoint presentation the other day. There's no need for me to go into detail of all of that. There are other things that could be spoken about, and I very briefly touched that, you know what, we need to have facilities whereby we can assist these people and we can stop them. We need to integrate them back into our societies. Let's not shun them. Let's not exploit them. These are all things that needs to be discussed, and these are all issues that are on our doorsteps. And something needs to be done about it. I'm not qualified to give that kind of counseling, even though people come to us. We can only go so far, and Moulana will explain the same. We need those professionals that can help these people within our communities. So my message to all the youth today, mashallah, the youngsters did a great job the other day with the presentation that they did. That, you know what, take it seriously. Don't even go towards it. And if you're involved in it, make that intention to change today before the doors are closed upon us. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Make a short dua, inshallah. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina wa Moulana Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi salatan tunjina biha min jamil ahwali wal afat wa taqdilana biha jamil hajat wa tutahhiruna biha min jamil sayyiat wa tarfa'una biha indaka ala darajat وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات إنك على كل شيء قدير يا ودود يا ودود يا ذا العرش المجيد يا مبدع يا معيد يا فعال لما يريد نسألك بنور وجهك الذي ملا أركان عرشك ونسألك بقدرتك التي قدرت بها على جميع خلقك ونسألك برحمتك الذي وسعت كل شيء لا إله إلا أنت يا مغيث أغثنا يا مغيث أغثنا يا مغيث أغثنا يا من لا تراه العيون ولا تخالطه الظنون ولا يصفه الواصفون ولا تغير الحوادث ولا يخشى الدوائر يعلم مثاقيل الجبال ومكائل البحار وعدد قتل الأمطار وعدد ورق الأشجار وعدد ما أظلم عليه الليل وأشق عليه النهار النار ولا تواري منه السماء سماء ولا أرض أرضا ولا بحر ما في قعره ولا جبل ما في وعره. اجعل خير عمرنا آخرة وخير أعمالنا خواتمة وخير أيامنا يوم نلقاك فيه. اللهم إنا إليك ضعفاء فقوي في رضاك ضعفنا وخذ إلى الخير بنواسينا واجعل الإسلام منتهى رضائنا. اللهم ثبتنا على الإيمان وأمتنا على الإيمان واحشرنا يوم القيامة مع المتقين مع الإيمان. سبحان ربك رب العزة ما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين برحمتك يا أرحم.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لك سمت وبك آمنت وعليك توكلت وعلى رزقك أفطرت.
Just a couple of quick important announcements. We have a special youth program inshallah this weekend. Over the weekend we've got special speaker from Bradford, Moulana Saifuddin, coming, and inshallah he shall be delivering the speech on Friday and Saturday. And then the Saturday night on a youth program inshallah shall be taking place. But we are all the way until suhoor inshallah, all the way until sahri. So brothers that are wishing to participate in that, because sahri arrangements need to be made, so they are requested that please register. There's a Google form, the link is going around. If you don't have it, then please ask. And similarly join the Jamea WhatsApp group so that you can get all the messages there. So brothers are requested that please try to sign up if you are intending to stay until suhoor. This is for over 14 years old only. The others can stay inshallah till the program finishes, and then after that only over the age of 14. And just a reminder to sign up to the donations as well. Alhamdulillah, 90 brothers have signed up. This is the last few days. Try to donate £20 daily. If not, then at least £10 inshallah daily from now until the end of the month inshallah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept everybody's donations.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا